The examination hall on Conclave Station Virith smelled like recycled air and quiet panic. 43 cadets from 11 species sat at their assigned terminals, stylus in hand, data slates glowing softly in the dim lighting. Outside the reinforced viewport, the gas giant Virith rotated in slow, indifferent loops, amber and rust, beautiful and uncaring. Inside, Examiner Drelvasic paced between the rows with the patience of a creature who had administered this test for 31 years and expected no surprises. He got one anyway. The Armory Aptitude Examination was the most feared assessment in the Conclave Military Academy's curriculum. Not because of the written component, though that alone caused 3 cadets per cycle to request emotional support assistance, but because of Section 7, the final section, the one that was printed on actual physical paper, distributed by hand, and collected personally by the examiner. Section 7 had one instruction. Improvise a weapon from the materials available to you at this station. Describe your method. Justify your choice. No material is off limits. The station provided a desk, a chair, a stylus, a data slate, the cadet's own uniform, ambient lighting fixtures, and the paper itself. Most cadets described theoretical constructs. A broken stylus as a puncture tool. A chair leg, if removable, as a bludgeon. The Keth cadets, silicon-based, immensely strong, typically just wrote my own hand and received full marks for honesty. The Velhari described sonic disruption patterns using the lighting frequencies. Every answer was expected, cataloged, scored against a rubric Drelvasic had memorized decades ago. He had never needed to update it. Until today, Cadet Marcus Vane sat in row 4, seat 9. Human, 22 years old by Terran reckoning. Brown eyes, medium build, the kind of unremarkable appearance that made other species consistently underestimate humans in enclosed spaces, which, Marcus had privately noted, was the galaxy's most persistent and expensive mistake. He read Section 7 twice. Then he looked at the paper. Then, very calmly, he read Section 7 one more time. He picked up the paper. He examined it, its weight, its grain, its precise rectangular edges. He tested the corner against his thumb, gently, thoughtfully, the way a craftsman tests a material before committing to it. Around him, other cadets were writing, scratching styluses across data slates, building their theoretical answers. Cadet Thrin of the Velhari had already filled 2 pages. Cadet Goresh 9 of the Keth was, as predicted, writing 2 words in their blocky script. Marcus set the paper down on the desk. He looked at the lighting strip above him. He looked at his uniform sleeve. He looked back at the paper. And then Examiner Drelvasic, who had been making his 31st-year rounds with the bored precision of a metronome, stopped walking. Because Cadet Marcus Vane was doing something no cadet had ever done in the history of Section 7. He was folding the paper. Not randomly. Not nervously. With intention. His hands moved with the focused economy of someone who had done this before, or someone who had, at some deep ancestral level, always known how. Crease by crease. Alignment checked against the desk edge. A fold reversed, reconsidered, corrected. The paper was becoming something. Drelvasic drifted closer, instinctively, the way predators and curious minds both move toward things they cannot immediately classify. Marcus was not looking up. He was in the work. Another fold. A tuck. He ran his thumbnail along a crease with firm, deliberate pressure. Once, twice, until the fold was sharp enough to catch the overhead light on its edge like a blade. He held it up, examined it critically, found it wanting, adjusted the angle of a secondary fold to redistribute the layers. Added tension, released tension. The paper had stopped being paper. It had become geometry. It had become intention made physical. Finally, he set it on the desk. It was not a crane. It was not an airplane. It was a shape without a name in most galactic languages. A tight, dense wedge, triple folded at the forward edge, the layers compressed so tightly by hand pressure and deliberate creasing that the leading point was no longer soft. The corner, once a gentle 90-degree paper angle, had been worked, folded, refolded, compressed, aligned, until it held a stiffness and a sharpness that paper had no right to hold. Then Marcus picked up his stylus, turned the paper over, and began to write. Drelvasic read over his shoulder, which was not protocol, and did not stop. Material used, Section 7 examination paper, provided. Method, Progressive fold compression using the Kanzashi-derived origami discipline, modified for single-sheet edge reinforcement. The paper was folded in 13 steps, creating a triple laminate leading edge with approximately 4 times the structural density of the original single sheet. Thumbnail pressure was applied to each crease to collapse the paper fibers along the fold line and eliminate recovery spring. The result is a pointed wedge with a reinforced tip capable of producing focused pressure delivery. Justification: a weapon does not require inherent hardness. It requires hardness relative to its target. Paper is soft. Paper compressed into a triple laminate point and driven with sufficient velocity against an unprotected eye, ear canal, or throat is not soft. It is a penetrating instrument. The edge of this paper, properly folded, can cut skin at sufficient velocity. The point can rupture a soft tissue target. Against an armored opponent, it is useless. Against an unarmored face at close range, it is not. The test asked me to improvise. I did not break anything. I did not steal anything. I did not request anything. I used the test itself. I am handing back the test. With its edge honed. Drelvasic stood very still for a long moment. Then he picked up the folded paper. He turned it in his fingers. He tested the edge against his own palm. Not enough to cut, but enough to feel the difference. The difference between paper and this. There was, he admitted to himself in the silence of professional honesty, a difference. He set it back down. He walked to his examiner's station. He opened the rubric file he had not updated in 31 years. He stared at it. The rubric awarded points in 4 categories: feasibility, resourcefulness, material justification, threat assessment. Every prior answer in the history of the examination had scored highest on feasibility and lowest on threat assessment, because theoretical weapons described in text were, by definition, not threatening. They were ideas. Comfortable, controllable ideas. Marcus Vane's answer had produced an object. An actual, physical, modified object that was sitting on desk 49 and was, by the precise definition of the rubric, a weapon improvised from available materials. The rubric did not know what to do with this. 31 years of rubric had never met this situation. Drelvasic gave him full marks in all 4 categories. Then he added a 5th line to the rubric that had never existed before. Literal compliance. Did the cadet interpret the instruction at its most fundamental level and execute accordingly? He scored Marcus Vane a perfect mark there too. The results were not supposed to be discussed until the full examination cycle concluded. Drelvasic announced them the same afternoon anyway. He was not a man who held interesting information comfortably. The other cadets reacted in their various species typical ways. The Velhari found it intellectually elegant and somewhat alarming. The Keth were unimpressed. They had written my own hand with the confidence of the immovable, and they stood by it. Cadet Thran, who had written 11 pages of sonic disruption theory, stared at the folded paper for a long time and said nothing, which for a Velhari was the loudest possible response. Marcus accepted the result with the mild, slightly embarrassed shrug that humans deployed when they had done something and were not entirely sure whether they should apologize for it. Drelvasic stopped him after the room cleared. Cadet Vane. Sir, where did you learn to fold paper like that? Marcus considered the question. My grandmother. She taught me origami when I was 6. She said it trained patience and spatial reasoning. Drelvasic looked at him for a long, measuring moment. Your grandmother taught you to make weapons. She taught me to make cranes, sir. I extrapolated. There was a silence. You are aware, Drelvasic said carefully, that you handed me back the test paper as your weapon submission. Yes, sir. Which means technically, you submitted nothing. I submitted the test paper, sir, with modifications. Another silence. That is an extremely human answer, Cadet. Marcus almost smiled. Thank you, sir. Drelvasic picked up the folded paper one more time. He examined the compressed edge. He set it in his personal effects drawer rather than the recycling bin, which was the first time in 31 years he had kept a cadet's examination material. He would not have been able to fully explain why, if asked. But he understood, in the way that long experience eventually teaches even the most protocol-bound examiner, that some answers deserved to be kept. Not because they were correct, because they changed what correct meant.